Oh, robotics people, I love you so much.
Yeah.
This is the I could talk forever about this, but yes, there's a technology problem. Let's focus on that, and we'll figure out the actual impact on society, how it's actually going to be applied, how it's actually going to be integrated from a policy and from a human perspective, from a business perspective later. First, let's solve the technology problem. That's not how life works, friends. But okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure you know the division of labor in these companies, right? There's sort of a business development side, and then there's the engineering side, right? And the engineers are like, oh my God, what are these business development people? Why are they involved?
Yeah,
Sort
exactly.
of like
Yeah.
in this process. So I ended up sort of coming up with a few different ideas that people seem to be batting around, and then really tried to zero in on a layman's understanding of the limitations, right? And it turns out that's really obvious and quite simple. Highway driving's a lot simpler, right? So the plan is simplify the problem, right? And focus on highways because city driving is so much more complicated. So from that, I came up with basically 6 scenarios. Actually, I came up with 5 that the developers were talking about. And then one that I thought was a good idea that I had read about, I think in like 2013 or 2014, which was actually something that the U.S. military was looking at. I actually first heard about the idea of this kind of automation, at least in sketched out form, in like 2011, I guess it was, with Peloton, which was this sort of early technology entrant into the trucking industry, which was working on platooning trucks. And all they were doing was, a cooperative adaptive cruise control, as they came to call it. And we ended up on a panel together. And it's kind of interesting because I was on that panel because I was thinking about how we got the best return on investment for fuel efficient technologies. And if it's cool, I'll sort of set this up because it comes into sort of the story of some of these scenarios. So when I studied the drivers, you had this like complete difference in the driving tasks, like we were talking about before with long haul and city, right? And you're not paid in the city. You've got congestion. The turns are tight. There's lots of, pedestrians and, all the things that self-driving truckers don't like, right? And they're not paid. There's lots of waiting time. And then in the highway, they get to cruise. They're getting paid. They have control. They go at their own pace. They're making money. They're happy. Well, it turned out, I guess it was around 2010, this is still when we were thinking about regenerative braking, and hybrid trucks being sort of like the solution. The problems with them sort of, and the advantages, also split on what I was thinking of as kind of the rural-urban divide at that time, right? So like you got the regenerative braking, right? You can make the truck lighter, you can keep it local, right? You don't get any benefit from that, hybrid electric on the rural highway. You want aerodynamics, right? There, you want low rolling resistance tires and these super aerodynamic, sleek trucks, right? Where we know with off-the-shelf technology today, we could double the fuel economy, more than double the fuel economy of the typical truck in that highway segment, if we segmented the duty cycle, right? And so in the urban environment, you want a clean burning truck, so you're not giving kids asthma. You want it lighter, so it's not destroying those less strong pavements, right? You can make tighter turns. You don't need a sleeper cab because the driver, hopefully is getting home at night, right? In the long haul, you want that super aerodynamic stuff. Now that doesn't get you anything in the city. And in fact, it causes all kinds of problems because you turn too tight, you crunch up all the aerodynamics that connect the tractor and the trailer. So the idea that I had was like, okay, what if we deliberately segmented it? Like, what if we created these drop lots outside cities where, a local city driver who's paid by the hour kind of runs these trailers out once they're loaded. Doesn't sit there and wait while it's being loaded. They drop off a trailer, they go pick up one that's loaded, they run it out. When it's loaded, they call them, and they just run them out there and stage them.
It's like an Uber driver, but for truckloads.
Yeah, and we have like intermodal. We have basically this would be the equivalent of like rail to truck intermodal, right? So you put it on the rail and then, a trucker picks it up and delivers it, right? So instead of having the rail, you'd have these super aerodynamic, hopefully platoons or what was at the time was called long combination vehicles, which is basically two trailers connected together, right? Because this is like a huge productivity gain, right? And then instead of that driver like me, I would pick up something in upstate New York, drive to Michigan, drive to Alabama, drive to Wisconsin, drive to Florida, I get home every 2 weeks. If I'm just running that, that double trailer, I might be able to go back and forth from Chicago to Detroit, right? Take two trailers there, pick up two trailers going back, right? And be home every night. Now, the problem with that at the time, or one of them was, bridge weights. So not all bridges can handle that much weight on them. They can't handle these doubles, right? And some places can, some places can't. So this platooning idea was happening at the same time. And we ended up on the same panel, and the founders were like, hey, so what's it like to follow really close behind another truck? Which was kind of the stage that they were at, was like, what's that experience going to be like? And I was like, truckers aren't going to like it. That's just like the cardinal rule is following distance. Like that's the one you really shouldn't violate, right? And when you're out on the road, like you have that trucker like right on your ass, people remember that. They don't remember the 99.9% of truckers that are not on their ass. Like they're very careful about that.
But when the trucks are really close together, there's benefits in terms of aerodynamics. So that's that's the idea. So like if you want to get some benefits of a platoon, you want them to be close together, but you're saying that's very uncomfortable for truckers.
Yeah. So, I think that ended up Peloton, I think is sort of winding down their work on this. And I think that ended up being still an open question. And I had a chance to interview a couple drivers who, at least one, maybe two of which had actually driven in their platoons. And I got completely different experiences. Some of them were like, it's really cool. I'm like in communication with that other driver. I can see on a screen what's out, the front of his truck. And then some were like, it's too close. And it might be one of those things that's just, takes an adjustment to sort of get there. So you get the aerodynamic advantage, which saves fuel. There's some problems though, right? So, you're getting that aerodynamic advantage because there's a low pressure system in front of that following truck. But the engine is designed with higher pressure feeding that engine, right? So there are sort of adjustments that you need to make, and still the benefits are there. That's one scenario, and that's just the automation of that acceleration and braking. Starsky, which probably a lot of your listeners heard about, was working on another scenario, which was to solve that local problem was going to do teleoperation, right? Sort of remote piloting. I had the chance to, sort of watch them do that. It was, they drove a truck in Florida from San Francisco in one of their offices. That was really interesting.